Happy New Year, everyone. I wanted to celebrate 2022, the first episode to be a little bit of a special and different episode. There's a couple over the next few days. Today, the greatest lines of wisdom, I think, that have influenced me, I won't say my whole life, but especially in the last couple of years. Let's not dilly-dally. I'll just get straight into it. There's a lot of really great lines and quotes from influential and non-influential people that have definitely influenced me, but I think that if you can start your year off with these 5 and reflect on them, I think you are going to be ahead of the curve. So let's get into it. Number 5, you might want to think about whether you want a life to envy or a life to admire. Jim Collins. You might want to think about whether you want a life to envy or a life to admire. In other words, do you want something that people are jealous of, or do you want to live something that people respect? The two might not necessarily be completely separate things, but your focus will manifest very differently, I think. Number 4, the great Viktor Frankl from Man's Search for Meaning, when he talks about self-transcendence. The more one forgets himself by giving himself to a cause to serve or another person to love, the more human he is, and the more he actualizes himself. What is called self-actualization is not an attainable aim at all, for the simple reason that the more one would strive for it, the more he would miss it. In other words, self-actualization is possible only as a side effect of self-transcendence. I find that very powerful. The concept of self-transcendence, if it's foreign to you, I think is worth going into and researching and figuring out what it means for yourself. Number 3, now this is tenuously attributed to Buckminster Fuller. And Buckminster Fuller, for context, was a very significant kind of 20th century figure across architecture. He was an author, a great thinker about the future. And he had a big transition when he was almost my age. When his daughter died, from memory, he lost his job. He was going to commit suicide in Lake Michigan, I believe. And he had a kind of transformative experience. I've yet to find good literature on this, but it's what's kind of rumored. And he had a kind of epiphany and turning point at this moment. And he reflected on a new mission for his life, which is stated as follows: this search for the principles governing the universe and help advance the evolution of humanity in accordance with them, finding ways of doing more with less to the end that all people everywhere can have more and more. So that line I've always found incredibly powerful. I read this for the first time last year, and I found it deeply reflects what I want to do with my own life. And this strive for learning seems to be very closely tied to helping advance quality of life for people everywhere. So that one hits me very deeply. Number 2, focus on what you have, you'll gain what you lack. Focus on what you lack, you'll lose what you have. Greg McKeown. So Greg McKeown said this on an episode of The Tim Ferriss Show. He's the author of books like Essentialism, and I think his second one was called Effortless, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think he's the original creator of this line, but it is one I've held very deeply in my life. Since I heard it for the last year. It seems to apply to every single situation. Relationships, progress, life achievement, people in your life, wealth, material possessions. This principle seems to be something we should apply to virtually everything. So I find it very powerful. Number 1, very, very key. Well, probably not a surprise. I only do what only I can do. And this is a line that struck me when I read it in Jack Delos's book, Unwritten. It was talked about there in terms of a principle for delegation, normally in business. But when I read it, I thought that that was a principle I would forever hold and apply to my own life in terms of delegating out of my life, screening other opportunities and distractions if there were things that other people could do. And I was resolute that going forward, I was going to only do what only I could do as a filter for what I should be focusing on in life. And it's always felt very reassuring to come back to this line when I'm at crossroads and forks and junctures. I only do what only I can do. So there you have it. There are the 5 biggest lines. An honorable mention comes from another one that found its way to me last year again. The George Bernard Shaw quote, "Some men see things as they are and ask why. I dream things that never were and ask, why not?" That gets an honorable mention. And what a great reframe for the way we think about things. So that's one to keep in mind, I think, going forward too. As you head into the year, I hope it's a prosperous and peaceful one. And something that might help you along the way too is that if you concentrate on opening doors for others, it might just be the best way to open 1,000 doors for yourself. Who knows? See you again tomorrow.